worst thing about this movie is that there's not more of them. We could have easily had a trilogy, babes. Question. Do you know this man? And don't just say he's some guy, because while that's true, his name is actually Edward Stratemeyer.
It's actually pronounced Stratemeyer.
And fun fact about this guy is that he is partially the reason why the Hardy Boys are into existence. Why is that relevant? It's because if you don't know who the Hardy Boys are, they were one of the first, were they for the first? I should have done my research before I did this. Who's to say if they were the first ever teen sleuth detective books, but they are definitely one of the most notable ones. In fact, with the success of the Hardy Boys, Eddie over here decided the only logical next step in capitalizing off this success was creating a girl version. Hence, Nancy Drew, who I fear ended up being more iconic than her predecessor, the Hardy Boys, but that's neither here nor there. Because since then, Nancy has been an iconic figure in American culture throughout the years, appearing in books, obviously, comics, video games, shows, movies. Speaking of movies, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the 2007 Nancy Drew movie starring Emma. What is her last name? I know there's like 3 famous Emmas in Hollywood. Emma, not Stone, not Watson. What is the third one? Is it Roberts? I think it's Roberts. I could just check. I have the thing. It's Emma Roberts. That's right. I love this movie so much. I had to secure a physical copy because this is who I am now, and it's collecting physical media. I'm a connoisseur of all things Nancy Drew. However, what you need to understand is Nancy and I have a very special relationship. And the best way to describe it is what Sonic the Hedgehog is to Aaron Hansen, Nancy Drew is to me, okay? I am her biggest fan, but I'm also her biggest hater because sometimes I'm just like, girl, what are you doing? All that to say, I love Nancy Drew and I love this movie. And I want to talk about it. I'm basically going to give you a play-by-play of the movie because I love it so much. And I just want to talk about it because it is just so, she's just so iconic. And I fear people don't get that because for some bloody reason, Rotten Tomatoes decided to give it a 50%. Rude. Because the people who are seeing this movie don't understand the brilliance of it because it is just, if you know Nancy Drew, this movie, it is perfect in the way that it encapsulates the je ne sais quoi that is Nancy Drew. And I'm here to basically gab about that. The first 7 minutes of the film is testament of that, which I'm gonna give you a play-by-play of. The movie opens up with a shot of a bookcase that all seem to be filled with books that look all so familiar, that seem to imply that they are the Nancy Drew books because they have this specific spine that is like yellow and blue, which has always been associated with like the Nancy Drew novels and the Hardy Boys, like the original books at least. Like, hold on, I gotta go back to my bookshelf. This is what the OG Nancy Drew books look like, that yellow spine. Classic, okay? Notoriety is what that is. So the movie opens up and you see these books. The camera zooms in and it transitions into these static black and white line art illustrations. Already, we're off to a great start. The reason why I love this so much is because, going back to our literature, something that I really love in the early original Nancy Drew novels is that they have these fun little illustrations. They have these lovely illustrations in these fine line pen drawings. They always have a little text at the bottom that indicates the scene in the book, and I love that. I wish they did more of it. It's such a small detail that they didn't have to include when making this movie, but the fact that they did shows that there's a little intentionality behind it. I love that. Love that for me. Because they pay an homage to the early novels and easily transition us into what Nancy does best, and that is solving a mystery.
Hello, I'm Nancy Drew.
The first 7 minutes of this movie do an incredible job establishing what makes this girly pop Miss Nancy Carolyn Drew. I don't know if her middle name is Carolyn, but I don't care. I've just decided that it is. After being caught snooping, because if Nancy's gonna do one thing, it's getting in everybody's business. She is nosy as hell, dog. Honestly, she's so real. The bad guys demand to know who she is because, hello, imagine in the middle of committing a crime, pulling a heist. You only got a few minutes before security comes down the hall to do their routine. So you gotta hustle, except there's some teenager sitting in the wardrobe spying on you. Being the sassy detective that she allegedly is, she hits them with the Nancy Drew charm and greets them and introduces herself, all while asking them who they are in the most polite manner, as if they just met at the farmer's market this morning. They're clearly exasperated by the weird setback that's occurring, so they hit her with the eye roll and the sarcasm, telling her to guess. And she absolutely reads them for film. Because the thing about Nancy Drew is that she is genuine. So while most people, including yours truly, would respond to pettiness with pettiness, Nancy's gonna do the opposite and hit you with that kind-hearted protagonist agenda. She goes to explain that they're working for some locksmith that gives these two guys the keys to whatever building they belong, and then they rob that place. She then goes on to say that it's really only the locksmith that the DA is after, and that these two grunts doing the work could probably cut a deal. I just love this because it kind of implies that while she definitely has an English exam coming up, she also has dealings with the district attorney's office. That's so iconic, I fear. Nancy tries to help the burglars out because Nancy just loves helping people. Like, yes, sometimes it does cross the people-pleasing border, but Girlie just has a good heart and good intentions, and if she can help people, she will. This fact applies to her mystery solving as well. My only issue with this is because of that, she doesn't get paid for the work that she does. Which, you know, if you want to do pro bono work, that's fine. But personally, why not secure a check? Like, I don't know. I'm just a Capricorn. Nancy assures them she could probably get the pastor of the church that they were in the process of robbing to drop the charges if they agree to go to some kind of counseling, since it seems that one of the robbers has anger management issues and the other one is a bit gullible. The burglars have this little bickering sesh about how the reason why the one dude who is clearly upset is because he hasn't eaten. And like the problem solver that she is, Nancy pulls out her sleuth kit, and just look at this. Honestly, I wish I was this organized. She pulls out what's probably one of the most iconic, I know I've said iconic throughout this entire thing, but this right here, this is probably the most iconic thing to rectify this situation.
One of Hannah's lemon bars.
For those uneducated on all things Nancy Drew, fear not, for I'm here to give you a crash course as we move along. Hannah is a housekeeper for the Drew residence, and there's a reason why, but we'll put a pin in that for later. We cut to outside the church where the one guy from the Kit Kittredge movie runs up to the scene. This is Ned Nickerson. I know, unfortunate name, but you need to understand that Ned is the boyfriend to ever boyfriend. He runs up to Bess, by which we then can assume that the girl next to her is George. Bess Marvin and George Faye are cousins, and they are also Nancy's best friends. Ned asks Bess if Nancy is okay because, hello, she's being held hostage. But Bess is like, yeah, she's having a great time. Like, this is her Hollow weekends. What do you mean? Like, if Bess and George were planning a weekend out and they asked, hey, Nancy, do you want to go to the club with us and have some fun? Nancy would be like, no, I think I'm just gonna flirt with the jaws of death. That seems like more fun to me. She's just so protagonist. Anyways, Nancy's father enters the scene, Carson Drew. He asks the assumed chief for any information on the well-being of his only child, and the chief says, she's Jay chillin'. It's all good. Nancy manages to get the burglars to agree to a deal to turn themselves in, and while they're walking to the exit, it's important to note the blocking of this scene because they're walking in a pattern where you have three friends on the sidewalk. One of them has to walk in the back, giving this weird power dynamic. Friendship trauma aside, the fact that Nancy is in the back tells us that these two don't view Nancy as a threat or someone to be cautious about. The two burglars have yet another little argument, and you can see on Nancy's face how while yes, she's feigning this very charming, polite persona, that she's very aware of the danger that she's in and is trying to plot a way out while they're momentarily distracted with themselves. She does a little cosplay from the Scooby-Doo playbook when she's clear and manages to climb up the curtain and onto the roof of the church. The town people clapping just saddens me. The burglars get caught. Nancy's waving on the roof, smiling, let everyone know that she's okay, but oh no! She slips and now she's sliding on the roof, resuming to fall to her death, but this is Nancy Drew we're talking about. So at the very last minute, she grabs onto the gutter and holds on for dear life. Everyone's gagged. Everyone's like, oh my God, Nancy, we have to get her down. But what does she do before the fire department can come get her? She pulls out a carabiner hook. I don't know if I said that right. I don't think I did. And grapples down the side of the building. Everyone cheers. She slides down the handrail because walking down the stairs is loser behavior and is met with her rightfully so concerned father because, hello, she almost fell off of a building. Hashtag just Nancy Drew things. Her dad goes off to get her car because he just ran over here from the courthouse. He's a lawyer, by the way. And Ned walks up to her to give her a gift, but is interrupted when she gets pulled off by the chief to congratulate her on being right on this case. She always is. This is nothing new. I know this scene is very small, but this little interruption is very true to how Nancy and Ned's relationship is and how the mystery solving that Nancy does often gets in the way of their relationship. And more often than not, Nancy doesn't necessarily prioritize her relationship with Ned like he does. I can't really remember how much from the book since one, it's been a while since I've read them, and two, Ned is usually deemed as like an afterthought in most cases. So I won't really speak on that, but it is true to the game. And I know this since I've been playing a lot of it recently, and I can assure you that it is true to the source material. They all take a group photo for the gram, and the pastor asks her what will they do without her, because, oh yeah, fun fact, and the plot of the movie, she's going to California for a few months with her dad. The pastor also randomly brings up Nancy's mom and how much Nancy looks just like her, and asks if she remembers anything about her, to which Nancy replies, no, very sullenly. Yeah, Nancy's mom is dead. She passed away when Nancy was a baby. That pin we put in earlier, yeah. When Nancy's mom died, Hannah was hired to be a live-in cook and housekeeper, but the Drew family views her more like a family member than an employee. So, fun fact for you, it'll be on the test later. That, what I just described, that was the first 7 minutes of the movie, and I know I just went into a lot of excessive detail, but the first 7 minutes of the movie were already starting out very strong, because that whole scenario, that is quintessential Nancy Drew. I don't know what could have been more Nancy Drew. Maybe if there were catacombs involved, then it would have been peak Nancy Drew. That is a good representation on what Nancy Drew is, and it kind of gives you a good insight on what her character is like. Anyways, the rest of the movie goes as such. God, I'm gonna be here forever. I have like 14 pages of notes.
I hope I don't run out of space.
So Nancy Drew is going to California, primarily because Carson Drew was hired on a case out there, so he and Nancy are gonna go live out there for a couple months while he's working. So during their time in California, he tells Nancy not to get into any sleuthing business during their time there, which sleuthing is literally in her DNA, but nonetheless, Nancy agrees. So they're heading out to go catch their train to head over to California. Ned stops by to give her the gift that he was going to give her earlier. She explains that she picked out a house that belongs to Delia Draycott, who is an actress from the 80s who mysteriously vanished during the height of her career and then came back again and decided to throw a huge party to celebrate her comeback, only to be found dead in the pool. The Drews make it to California. They pull up to the house, to which the realtor of it is surprised that Carson didn't know the infamy of the house, nor who it belonged to. Mainly because Nancy didn't tell him about it, obviously. Because when she picked out the house, it was before she had made the agreement with her dad. So if her dad finds out that she picked a house that has a mystery, he's not gonna be happy about that. But it's fine. They just need to keep it on a need-to-know basis, and her dad doesn't need to know. The realtor continues to give Nancy a tour of the upper floor of the house when suddenly the ghost of Delia makes an appearance. Oh my gosh. Sorry, did not mean to hit you with the Chandler Bing. J.K. Lowell, it's a bit. It's not actually the ghost of Delia. So as she's unpacking her things, Nancy hears something moving around the house. She calls out. No one responds. Weird, but okay. Only to find that her scrapbook on the Delia case is gone, along with her moccasins for some reason. Later that night, Nancy hears movement again and realizes it's coming from the attic, only to get there and find that it's empty. Nancy asks permission from Mr. Leshing, who is the caretaker of the place, to borrow some of Delia's books, and in one of them she finds a letter written by Delia apologizing to someone named Z, stating that things are different now and that she's going to rewrite her will because of it.
Okay.
This is a monumental discovery, and it has Nancy in a major dilemma because she promised her dad no more mysteries, but this is the mystery, and this has Nancy up all night by One Direction deluxe version. Welcome to Nancy's first day at her new school, and oh my god, it is so Y2K. Like, if you're trying to find some style inspiration based off of the early 2000s, this movie is a good reference for that, because some of these fits, my guy, this is authentic Y2K. We get a montage of Nancy effortlessly excelling at all of her classes because she is that girl. Only problem is, this is the early 2000s. So the entire culture of the school isn't very fond of things that are different, and they're going to bully her for this. Which is so odd in the way that they do this, because she's just unbothered the entire time. She's not causing problems for everyone, but they decided, nope, we're gonna make fun of you now. It's Make Fun of Nancy Drew Mondays, which is just so weird because Nancy, she's so unproblematic. Like, literally, when Trina Vega's brother starts choking on a soft pretzel, she starts calling for help, asking if anyone knows CPR. Nancy jumps to help her because she's nothing if not a good person. She starts doing the certified compressions needed and goes to give mouth to mouth, only for Corky to start giggling because the joke is Nancy would be kissing him. I guess. I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that saving someone's life was peak comedy. Anyways, Nancy walks it off though, and it's because of this that she realizes that she's gotta be who she is, which is being nosy. So she gets back into solving the Delia Draycott case. She's interrupted when she hears some strange thumping and moving sounds around downstairs and manages to find an old projector room in the house and decides to watch some of Delia's films. Mr. Leshing shows up because he kind of just spawns randomly. Like, we don't know how he's doing it, but he is. But Nancy learns from him that he was actually there when she died. What? Throw clues? What does that say? Trying to figure out something about this mystery. Nancy does a search engine on Delia's filmography and learns that movies aren't shot from beginning to end. So she takes the last movie that Delia ever shot and rearranges it in chronological order of like when each shot was shot. Don't know how she figures that out, but she does. And she notices that the month before she disappears, she's only shown from the chest up. Interesting. Nancy also points out from a newspaper clipping that she found of a photo taken of Delia a month after her reappearance, where she's wearing a robe with an X on it. Nancy lastly, oh, that's why it says 3 clues. It says there's 3 clues to talk about. Oh my God. I wrote these notes a while ago, so bear with me. Nancy lastly points out the blurred figure of a man that Delia's always with must be Z. So because Nancy has reached a dead end with the robe, she and Corky pull up to a movie set to try to speak to someone who is an expert in clothing. Why it was somebody on a movie scene, I don't know. It's really random and very out of place. Nancy accidentally gets mistaken for an extra and gets rolled into a rehearsal, which again is so unnecessary to the plot, but it is so pinnacle Nancy core. She's just politely stumbling into an incorrect situation and is offered to be in charge of it because she fixed a slight problem. Like, as they're leaving the set, a light gets blessed into a pair of palm trees, and that's when Nancy realizes that the X on Delia's robe was actually a pair of palm trees just making an X. Sure, I guess that tracks. She does a little bit of research and she finds out that the only place that has this matching logo is a place called Twin Palms Bungalow and Spa. From there, she decides to go to the nearest hospital since we're currently working with a theory that she was pregnant and then she went away to have the baby and then she went there to recover. That's the theory we're rolling with right now. Unfortunately, Nancy is hit with another dead end because they tell her that the hospital records are sealed. So to thank the guy for helping her, Nancy gives him a blondie, courtesy of Hannah. And then he gives her a tip that the county recommends a pediatrician for new adopted parents and those records on seal because who needs HIPAA? Turns out that there were 3 babies born in the time frame that Nancy is working with. Being the it girl that she is, she finds the names and the addresses of all the people who have that name and goes to each and every one of them to see if that's who she's looking for. Don't talk to me about logistics. Yes, you could argue, okay, well, like, what if they didn't stay in that area? Technically, wouldn't she have to check with everyone in all of the United States or even potentially the entire world? Yes. But what did I just say about logistics? Don't talk to me about them. It's a no from all of them until it's not. Nancy finds Abigail and she notices the similarities between her and Delia and comes to the realization that she's the secret love child of Delia Dracon. If Jane is Delia's daughter, then there might have been something left over for her that proves that she is Delia's daughter. So we have another mystery now on our hands. As Nancy and Corky are walking, trying to figure out what to do next. I don't know why they're walking in an underneath tunnel where there are no sidewalks, but I digress. They almost get hit by a car. But almost getting killed is just a regular Tuesday for Nancy. And she's already made a mental note of the make and model and the dealer plates of the car that almost hit her. We love a girl who's functions well under pressure. Then she gets a threatening phone call while she's having brunch with her dad, which only proves that she's on the right track. Nancy decides to see if she can speak with one of the lawyers who represent Delia's estate, but it's all business, so she's only able to get a contact card to chat with him later. She goes to update Jane on where she's at right now in the case, but suddenly Jane has no interest in this, even though this could ultimately change her life for the better. Very strange, but we're moving on. That night, Nancy gets visited by an apparition of Delia telling her that the will is in the Chinese box. I don't know how to do it. Wait, when did the transatlantic accent stop popping? Turns out she was dreaming, but she follows her hunch and starts to hunt down the dealer who bought Delia's, how do you even say that?
Chinoiserie.
Chinoiserie? That's how you say that? She's trying to find the person who bought all her chinoiserie. That is a weird word to say. Incoming call from Dad. He tells Nancy that he got her an early birthday gift for complying with his no sleuthing rule. This is awkward. Turns out the gift is her classic baby blue roadster. But more importantly, Ned. Ned and Nancy's unnecessary complicated relationship is everything to me. Okay. Nancy and Corky had a prior lunch schedule for that day. Ned tags along and then Corky's sister and her friend crash the scene, but it's whatever because Nancy's nothing if not a multitasker and breaks away to investigate the shop that procured Delia's possessions. Now, she could have just asked the owner if he had any that belonged to Delia, but we're overdue for a montage. The owner shows her the last box that comes up empty. As they leave, Nancy hears a faint ticking in her car and finds that someone just left a bomb sitting there. Turns out, whoever left the bomb is also the same person that tried to run her off the road. Nancy starts to chase them, but makes the executive decision to stop working on the case and instead act like the average American teenager. Nancy notices something strange about Ned's shirt, so they go to check out the closet where it was kept, and that's when she figures out that the attic presumably connects to the false back door connected to this closet. As she further investigates, Nancy finds a bunch of shortcuts to different areas in the house, including, drumroll please, catacomb baby, let's go! It is not a Nancy Drew mystery if there are not catacombs. I don't know what to tell you. Turns out the tunnel leads to Lushing's apartment building. Interesting. In her effort to cosplay a non-mystery solving adjacent teenager, Nancy throws a birthday party. And I'm absolutely obsessed with the idea that she has her own monogram note cards. Like, yes, girl. She's never not slaying. She invites some people from school and then goes to invite Jane and her daughter, but she discovers that Jane has been evicted from her building, it seems. Also, this look that Nancy is giving us, if there's one thing Nancy is always gonna do, it's serve us looks. Like, honestly, every outfit she's worn in this movie is just slay after slay after slay after slay. Like, she is giving. Whoever was the costume designer in this movie, you weighed down. You did your research and you know what was up. And I appreciate you for that. After Nancy sees Ned off, she's about to get from the table from her dad. That's a new cell phone. Oh my God, that's so nice of him. There's a knock at the door, and it's none other than Jane. She's in tears because CPS took away her kid. So Nancy asks her dad to help because he's a lawyer. He can do that thing where he does the law. He says he'll do what he can, and Jane tells Nancy that the reason why she was so weird with her earlier is because some guy with heterochromia, keynote there, pulled up to her place and threatened her if she tried to prove she was Delia Draycott's daughter. So suspicious. Just means that we're on the right track. I'm trying to figure out what everything means, because what were we trying to figure out again? Now it's gotten serious. Nancy decides to come clean to her dad, but she can't because Carson has a meeting with Delia's estate lawyer, since Jane made the claim that she's Delia's daughter and might have a way to fix this whole situation. Now, it wouldn't be a Nancy Drew tale if Nancy didn't talk about her deceased mother.
Nancy, I don't think you understand what it's like growing up without a mom.
Actually, that is such a wild statement to say to somebody. You never know what people are going through or have gone through, so it's best not to assume. Pause the drama. Nancy spotted a clue. That dream she had where Delia said, "The will is in the Chinese box." Yeah, it was actually a scene from one of her movies. And it turns out that the will is actually hidden in a secret compartment in the box. You know what that means. We had to head back to the store to go look in that hidden compartment to see if the will is there, and oh my God, the will is there! As Nancy's reading the will, Nancy discovers that she was right and that Delia leaves the entirety of her estate to her daughter. Nancy calls her dad to tell what she's found, but he's confused because he doesn't recognize the number that she's calling from, even though she should be calling from the phone that her dad got her. Oh, wait a minute. I am also very aware that the logistics of this one also do not make any sense, because how on earth did they get her so quick? That's neither here nor there. Nancy wakes up in an abandoned theater and learns that the man who took her are the goons that have been breaking into her house and stealing her shit. She gets it back though because she's nothing if not resourceful, and she manages to get away, but still ends up in the hospital. She finally comes clean to her dad and they talk it out. On the remix, she learns that apparently he was offered some consulting lawyer work that could be done in River Heights, where they're from, by Mr. Biedermeier, Delia's lawyer. So they can go home. They don't have to be in California anymore. Babes, turns out Mr. Biedermeier was actually Delia's manager before he became her lawyer. He claims that he made her into who she was. He also signs his name with a Z initial, if you couldn't clearly tell by how comically large in size of placing it is. Like, they really want to establish, like, babes, his middle initial is Z. That's the surprise tool that will help us later, literally in like 2 seconds. So that the will is real, his firm is stand to lose everything if they lose her estate. Also, the guy who's driving the car has heterochromia. Oh no, the pieces are puzzling together. It seems Nancy makes another executive decision and decides to jump out of a moving vehicle when she realizes, oh my God, this is the person behind it all along, leaving her dad to fend for himself. She makes a break for it and manages to escape through the tunnels, but Biedermeier catches her. He admits that he killed Delia. Why? Because after she had given birth, she decided that she actually wanted to be a mother and decided to give everything that was hers to her child and wanted to run off with the caretaker. The caretaker Isn't that Leshing? Oh yeah, Leshing is the father. Nancy manages to make a break for it, but ultimately gets cornered by the bad guys. She'd be done for if it wasn't for her wits and Leshy coming out of the wall. As an added bonus, Nancy got the whole admission on tape, which technically might be admissible in a court of law, but it's fine. Logistics do not exist here. The goons are arrested, a family is reunited, and Nancy and Ned get together. Case closed. The end of this film teases a secondary movie because at the end of it, Nancy gets a call from Scotland about the Loch Ness Monster and some missing diamonds. And I fear we were robbed of a sequel. Nay, we were robbed of a trilogy. Do you know how much a trilogy of these kind of Nancy Drew movies would have ate down? The worst thing about this movie is that there's not more of them. We could have easily had a trilogy, babes. Apparently they were supposed to do a second film, but I guess there were some issues in Emma's schedule because I think she was working on something called Horse Girl, but I don't think that ever got made. I know I've been here for a while, maybe not, because the miracle of editing, I don't understand. These are my closing thoughts. This movie is excellent. I love this movie so much because it understands the quirkiness and the charm that is Nancy Drew, and it gives you that in this movie while still giving you a with the times modern, like, fun little mystery. Like, yeah, there are some things that don't really make sense. Like, unless they Google search Nancy, how on earth did they know that she was a mystery solving gal? And they didn't want her to get involved with the death around Delia, and that's why they took her scrapbook, because she wasn't poking around till I guess she got bullied and decided, yeah, I'm gonna stick my nose where it doesn't belong because that's what I do best. Nancy Drew is fun and she's a bit of whimsy to her. And yeah, I could be biased, but who cares? In my opinion, if you're gonna do a modern adaptation of Nancy Drew, this is the way to do it. This movie is very much in line with the way that they did the live action Scooby-Doo movies, like the ones from the 2000s, are the same brand as this Nancy Drew movie. Like, I don't know how to explain it except that way. In any case, if you've never seen this movie, I'm sorry, I just spoiled the whole thing for you. Maybe I should have gave a warning earlier. Maybe you haven't seen this movie in a while. I would implore you to watch it. I love this movie. It is one of my favorites of all time, and it's fun to talk about something that I like for once. I'm usually always complaining every time I'm online. Positivity for the win. Let's go. If you got to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that. If you were working on an art project or crafting, glad I was there to help you pass the time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I could talk about Nancy Drew all day. I won't, but I could. And that may or may not be a threat, but I digress. Until next time, my dream believers and adventure seekers, bye!